There you go. Recording is on. I heard that voice. Do you all hear that voice?
Yes.
Very soothing. I think it's like ASMR to me. Recording is on. So share videos.
Start screen sharing should be the third icon from the left on the bottom.
Third icon from the left. Oh yeah, that's right. We did this last week, and clearly I'm trying to figure this out. So we're gonna go with the entire screen and click on that. Share. Here we go. Can everyone see my screen right now? You see yourselves? You see this? Perfect.
Yes.
And
yes,
we'll launch into the slideshow. So, hi everybody. I'm Bassam Chiblak, or in French, Bassam Chiblak, or in Arabic, Bassam Chiblak. And I'd like to introduce you to this, lunch and learn that's called Beyond Awkwardness in Professional Linguistic Mentorship. I work at Bishop's University in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and I do have an affiliation to PERT, as you will come to see. But before we get going, I think what I would like us all to do is think of maybe something that is really awkward. I don't know if you know what awkwardness means. We'll come to define it at some point in this presentation very soon. But I want you to think about something really awkward. Hold on to that thought and think about the way it makes you feel. And then we're going to go through this presentation and hopefully alleviate some of that tension. All right. So is everyone with me? Can you all see the screen? Everything's good? Okay. So this is a cool slide that was included in the branding of the PowerPoint slides that was shared to me. So I just kind of want to play it. I love it. Wanted to compliment PERT on their branding here. All right, and we move on to the next slide. So the session plan that we have for us today will include the following. We're going to start off by talking about our backgrounds. I'm going to talk about mine. And I'm going to talk to you about yours. I'm going to tell you how I interpret your background and what role you have to play and why it's so crucial that you're learning French and that you're following this amazing program that PERT has generated for you, Circonflex. We're going to look at some terms and tools, which I think is really important to set the framework for our awkward case study. So I have 3 awkward case studies. I could have probably shared with you 1,000. Really, maybe I'm exaggerating, but a lot more than 3. But I chose 3 because they all reflect a different kind of awkward situation. And awkwardness doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It could be very positive as well, as you'll come to see. And some key takeaways. So that's what we're going to do throughout this presentation. So for my background, so I'm at Bishop's University. I work in a field called Experiential Learning. I'm an Experiential Learning Coordinator. So what I do is I take students learning, take the theory, make it active by making it multisensory somehow, and then adding a reflection component. So I allow students to reflect on the learning that is happening. And then I also was in charge of a program called the French Microcertificate Program at Bishop's. It's part of the Département d'études françaises et québécoises, run by Dr. Sarah Theberge. And what we do in this program is students learn French in an intensive way, and then we place them with a job shadowing supervisor. So it kind of resembles this whole mentorship thing that we have here with PERT. And the students get to work, quote unquote work. They have a small project of either between 20 and 80 hours in a semester where they get to do it all in French in a field that's related to what they're studying. And so that's the reason why I was asked to essentially present today, to share some of my experiences from the work that I already do. I'm on the Provincial Employment Roundtable, as I mentioned, so I'm on the board of directors for that. And I'm part of the education sectoral table and part of the employment services sectoral table. So those tables inform my understanding of what the needs are and opportunities are in linguistic learning in Quebec from a professional standpoint. And I'm on, like I said, on the board of directors. So I help, I vote on certain matters tied to the Provincial Employment Roundtable as well. My relationship with languages. So I speak multiple languages, some better than others. I speak English and Arabic. I learned both when I was a little kid, and I learned them simultaneously. So I don't remember a time where I didn't speak those two languages. I have my accent has evolved in English. I used to have a British accent when I was a kid, and then it became a Canadian accent as I moved to Canada with my family. And then French I learned in elementary school. And then Italian and Russian I learned in my 20s. And I will say that I speak better Italian than Russian because it's closer to French. But all this to say is that I feel your pain in terms of language learning, because there are different opportunities and obstacles depending on the age that you learn a language in. And the later in life you learn it, it's not that your brain is actually not elastic. I think that's a lie. I think that's been disproved more recently, but it's more that we don't have a lot of time sometimes to practice. So we have to take advantage of every opportunity that presents itself to us. So let's talk about you. Your background, I think, is really crucial to all of this. I think you're joining a program that is it's meant to make a big impact on society, but it's also meant to make a big impact on you. And I commend you for your courage to seek language learning for the mentees. That is at this stage in your lives. I think it's crucial for you, and I respect everything that you're doing, and I'm supporting. I'm here to cheer you on. And for those who are mentors, I commend you on being mission oriented and wanting to make your environment a better place and wanting to help people out. It's really important. I understand that your motivations for learning French on the whole are professional. And I think it's true what you say, because the impact on Quebec from an economic standpoint it cannot be understated. If you learn French, you are more likely to find work, be employed, get paid more, and contribute to the economy. But likewise, I think the significance on you is that your opportunities would open up even more for you if you not necessarily even mastered French, but were able to communicate and be understood in French. I think that would go a long way. The other thing is, French can't be learned overnight. A language can't be learned overnight, and we have to understand that it's a process. So can language be learned in a day, a week, a month, a year? What do you mean? What do we mean by that, really? I think that's the crucial question here. I think we're constantly learning a language. For the rest of our lives, we're going to continue learning the languages we speak, and we're going to hopefully improve every day, because we're actively thinking about what it is that we want to get out of the language that we speak. And then I think the thing that carries us through beyond our professional motivations is our love of languages. You have to love the language to really speak it. So I'm going to move on to the next slides. And Michelle, I can't see you all now that I have it on this mode. So if I'm like just going off and I don't know what's happening, can you just like come and interrupt me and say, "We got your back, everything's good," kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. So terms and tools. So some of the keywords for today, I think one keyword is experiential learning. It's the field I'm involved in. What you're doing is a form of experiential learning. You're not just learning French from the Becherel or your Larousse dictionary. You're actually engaging with someone one-on-one, and you're interacting in an active way that's multi-sensory. Okay, so that's very crucial. And by experiential learning, we take the theory, put it into practice, as I said, but we reflect on it in an ongoing way. So you have to track your learning journey after every interaction as much as possible, so that you could set goals for yourself for the next time. Mentorship is also a term that we need to define. Okay, so a mentor, the way I understand a mentor, is really different than a supervisor. And this is important because I'm coming to you from an academic setting where students were placed with a supervisor. We're talking about mentor and mentee. A mentor is someone who has your back unconditionally, who's there for you to support you in your language learning process, who's there to listen to you, someone you can confide in about your mission to acquire French as a language and to get even better at, to hone it and shape it in such a way that you feel like it's something that you can use on a day-to-day basis. A supervisor is someone who's working with you on a very specific project. So a supervisor can be a mentor, but a mentor is not necessarily a supervisor, right? So I want to make that distinction because I'm coming from a background where I'm placing students and language learners in a very professional setting. And so now you can see the distinction between mentee and supervisee. A mentee is someone who has a long-lasting relationship with their mentor, in which they are setting goals for language learning together, where there is a sense of mutual respect and understanding. And not to say that that's not the case with a supervisor and a supervisee, but the parameters are different. In the case of students, they were getting marked or they were getting paid. It changes the dynamic slightly, right? Where the outcomes that are expected are slightly different. Now, on the term awkwardness, so in French, there's no word that translates perfectly to represent the word awkwardness, but we can define awkwardness through 4 or 5 words that I think really kind of express it really well. There's embarras, which means embarrassment, and that's one element of awkwardness, right? Lourdeur, which means heaviness, a kind of like, I don't know what to do next. I feel the weight of the world on me. So there's a kind of lourdeur in the interaction. Malaise, so it's unease, so not feeling like you're comfortable, but that doesn't necessarily mean things are awkward. It's just it's one element of awkwardness. And then maladresse, which is clumsiness. So all those things put together, in some sense, represent awkwardness. And I think it's kind of awkward that there isn't a word that means awkward in other languages, and that's the word I actually chose for the presentation. And I only came to realize it as I was preparing the presentation for you all today. There are different kinds of awkwardness, but we're going to start off with general awkwardness outside of language. Why do we feel awkward? Well, we need to belong. We want to be part of a bigger group. In fact, as humans, it's crucial to our survival to belong. And so when things don't feel like they're fitting well within the larger group, then we're like, I don't know. I feel uneasy. This isn't going right. Social expectations. So depending on the culture, different cultures have different social expectations. And when we are new to a culture, the social expectations might not be obvious to us, and that could create awkwardness. Sometimes when you're very excited and very motivated, your intensity makes you so focused and you're just like staring really deeply at somebody, and it's kind of unusual and it's not the right level of energy sometimes, and that can create awkwardness. Sometimes when we're overwhelmed by a situation, we get kind of distracted, where our brain experiences a kind of limited attention. Our thoughts wander, and if someone's talking to us, maybe we're not hearing what they're saying, and then that creates, another form of awkwardness. Emotions play a big factor. So we all experience different emotions throughout the day, and then we come together and we meet, and then that blend of emotions could create that strangeness that leads to awkwardness. Perfectionism, that's the number one, I think, reason for awkwardness. The more perfectionist we are, the more awkward the situation's going to be, I think. Because I think when you strive for something perfect, you're afraid to make mistakes. And then that leads to awkwardness in general in life. And then being strange. I think some of us and all of us are actually strange in our own way. And our strangeness, our quirks, the things that make us who we are, the way we speak, the way we, wave our hands or whatever it is, that will lead to awkwardness as well. And it's not necessarily a good thing. We have to embrace the fact that we're all different and we're all strange and that we're all potentially awkward. So awkwardness in linguistic situations, how I've experienced it when I'm placing students with their supervisors at Bishops, and I'm acting as their mentor. You experience awkwardness through limited vocabulary. So sometimes not having if you're a mentee, you don't have like the full vocabulary to really share what you're saying. You're not nuancing your points in a way that's specific to the language you natively speak. Sometimes we're translating things syntactically. So we're translating from one language to the next. So if you're translating from English, like a sentence structure in English into French, it doesn't always sound right, and that can create a bit of awkwardness. Sometimes we're worried about pronunciation, and that leads to awkwardness. Then there's a fear of making mistakes. So if you're a bit of a perfectionist and you want to get it right all the time, then you're not going to take those risks. And then when you don't take those risks, you kind of make more mistakes, or it leads to some unusual situations, I think. And then sometimes if you're a mentee and you're always agreeing, you're saying, yeah, I get it. But maybe you're not expressing what's really on your mind. That could also lead to some awkwardness. So there's so many reasons for that. And then cultural differences, of course. And then on top of it all, if you add a professional setting to the situation, or if you're trying to engage with someone because for professional reasons, the pressure mounts even more. So those are all reasons why awkwardness exists. So my first tip for everybody, and we're going to look at these case studies, and we're going to try to use these tips that I've provided here as a kind of framework to discuss these case studies, is to reset. So you want to remind yourself that awkwardness can happen at any point. I could be talking to you right now and my cat could show up on the screen, and that would be kind of awkward for me. I'd feel like it's maybe unusual, like this should not have happened. So it magnifies something that is out of the ordinary, right? So just tell yourself that this could actually happen. Communicate your awkwardness to your partner. So when you're with a mentor, or if you're a mentee, if you're a mentee with a mentor and a mentor with a mentee, communicate what you might anticipate could be awkward. You could tell people that you're feeling a bit anxious about the conversation today. Or you could say to someone, hey, I honestly don't know all the words in French, and I'm going to try my best to help you out. But if I don't know, please don't be so hard on me. Communicate what you might feel is awkward right off the bat. Then focus on what's ahead. The key to language learning is not to dwell on the mistakes, but really to kind of look forward to improving with every moment, with every day, with every week, every month that you're doing this. And so just be kind to yourself and to your partner. I think that's crucial in resetting. Your mindset. You have to have a mission mindset going into this. So I think what's crucial is to remind yourself why you joined Circonflex, or why you're learning French in the first place, and have that be the drive throughout this entire process. Then be realistic about what you can achieve, right? Do you have the time? Are you listening to every podcast in French? Are you trying to buy your groceries in French? Are you doing all those things even outside of your mentorship relationship if you're the mentee? Be realistic about the objectives. And if you're the mentor, also be realistic about what someone can achieve and let them grow in their own comfortable pace. Don't push them too hard either. And maybe even create more awkwardness by adding that pressure. Let people come at it naturally. That's how learning happens best. And then focus on the process. The process is key here. So if you love language, if you're doing this out of love, if you're doing this for all the right reasons, you won't be afraid to make mistakes. You won't take those risks if you're the language learner, and you're going to really enjoy the process as a result. And if you're communicating that process with your mentor, they can also help you throughout that process by helping you target certain goals, by helping you feel really accepted in the way you use French. And then focus on your growth. Both individuals should focus on their growth, because I don't think we're perfect as mentors as well. I think as mentors, we can find better ways to assist our mentees. And likewise, mentees, don't focus on the final product. You're going to keep learning French until you're however old, for the rest of your lives. So don't focus so much on, the final outcome. The outcome is happening as you are practicing and speaking and trying your best. Practical tips. I think, going into any session, prepare some vocabulary in terms of phrase that you really want to use. Maybe you like to say something in one language and you're like, what's the equivalent in French? Also prepare the jargon that's tied to your professional field, because a lot of you are here for professional reasons. So consider that. Simulate a lot of situations outside of the mentorship dynamic. I say, look at yourself in the mirror and do it if you have to, or talk to someone who doesn't even speak French if you're the mentee. And if you're the mentor, also simulate how you might nurture the mentorship dynamic, without your mentee. You could practice that as well. I had to, when I was taking care of students, being their mentor outside of their supervisor. And then immersion and real world situations. As I said, you have to start, if you're the mentee, listening to music in French, watching a couple French TV shows, try to engage with people outside of your mentorship dynamic and the professional world in French, and try to network with people in your field and see if they will provide you with a kind of informational interview, maybe in French as well. So those are different options. We could talk about that later on as well. Try to engage in a small project or have goals really for the experience. Maybe you want to learn 50 new adjectives by the end of your mentorship dynamic. I don't know, but you're going to have to decide what it is that you want to learn and be clear about it from the onset if you're the mentee and mentor as well. Make sure that you have goals to strive for, or work on some kind of small project, even if it's just a conversational one together, that will lead to it to be a lot more fun. And always be on time, respectful of your partner's involvement in this project. Because, like I said, I'm really just impressed with the fact that you're all doing this. This is a beautiful exercise that will hopefully be meaningful to you for the rest of your lives. And again, make and embrace your mistakes. I can't repeat this enough. Get comfortable with asking questions and receiving them as well. So a lot of conversation is about developing good questions. And as you reflect upon your language learning journey, you're going to be answering questions and thinking about questions all the time. But in lieu of preparing questions, listen and pay attention to each other. I think that's really crucial. When people say something, they're also leaving you with hints as to what you could say next. So, you're talking to someone, they tell you, my name is Bassam and I love blue doors, and that's just who I am. I love doors that are the color blue. I've just given you enough information for you to follow up with a good question. Why do you love blue doors? Are you an engineer? I don't know. Is blue your favorite color? So a conversation really happens when someone shares information, and then you feed off of that information and loop it back into the whole. And then if things are going too quickly, just slow it down. Sometimes pronouncing something is really hard. Sometimes as a mentor, you don't have the answer right away. So you say, you know what, that's a really good question. Let me look into that for you. Or if you're someone who is struggling with the language itself, take your time, breathe, get the words out. I know that when I start using English to start the day and I switch over to French, even if I'm perfectly fluent and I have a great French accent, it's perfect. People tell me it's wonderful. Sometimes my mouth is so conditioned to speak English that the words are going to come out funny in French, and vice versa. So slow it down and just, appreciate the process. And finally, for better connection, we need to be authentic. So bring your true self to every conversation. Be welcoming. Mentor and mentee. Hi, how are you? It's so good to see you. I'm so excited to be with you. Start with that. Create a dynamic that shows positivity. I think it makes language learning a lot more fun. Be open to hear something different, learn something new from someone, but don't be too intrusive either. I think it's really important not to go places where people are generally uncomfortable. So maybe don't bring up politics or anything like that, but be open to receiving information that someone is sharing with you, as long as it's not divisive. It brings us together. Be forgiving with each other. If someone gets it wrong, it's all right. Be forgiving with yourself. You don't have to be perfect, like I was saying. Be grateful for this interaction, because you two are coming together. You and your mentor are coming together to make something wonderful happen. Make sure to start every session by saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that we're having together. Cordiality, civility, all those things are really crucial in this process, I think. And then be patient. The words sometimes take longer to come out. Sometimes our minds wander, so we're not always perfectly paying attention. We're humans. We're not perfect. So be patient with each other and just be awkward. Maybe you have a little ritual that allows you to be awkward with your partner. Maybe you start off by doing funny faces, and that kind of relieves the tension and makes awkwardness something that is, quite possible. So our pillars and our values are setting things up with welcome and gratitude, like I was saying, being very honest about what you want to learn, where you're at if you're the mentee, and communicating that with your mentor, and vice versa. As a mentor, maybe say to the person, I don't think I can give you all of this information right off the bat, but if we work together towards a plan, I can help you out with that. Be very honest with each other right off the bat, because I think that'll leave the tension that's tied to the awkwardness, and then you can really trust each other better. If you're the mentee, and focus on the things that give you confidence. If you say bonjour better than anybody, then you say bonjour better than anybody, okay? Lean into that. And if you're the mentor, really support your mentee in the things that they do well. Cheer them on for all the challenges that they're going through. It's really hard to learn a language with all the activities that we have to be involved in, especially, making money to feed ourselves, to pay for bills, things like that. So be very supportive and understanding of each other. Take some risks. If you are the language learner, try to say a new word, and if it comes out wrong, or a new sentence, if it comes out wrong, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Laugh about it. Both of you should be comfortable to laugh about those little mistakes, and I think that'll really help a lot. And then, like I said, reflect and reflect and reflect. Keep reflecting. That's the crucial thing. Keep thinking about your learning journey as you go along. Journal it. Talk to someone who is outside of your mentorship relationship. Talk to your mentor or your mentee about what the learning has felt like so far and where you can go next. So the silver lining, most people are too busy and awkward to notice your awkwardness, okay? So just remember that. Everyone is being awkward in their own way. We're not necessarily thinking about someone else being awkward. We're really more focused on ourselves as human beings, I think, on the whole. Come from a place of love. So, love the human interaction, be welcoming, but also love the language that you're learning. It'll take you a long way. And it's about communication. So just focus on being understood if you're the mentee, and vice versa. If you're the mentor too, your mentee might not understand you. You don't have to default to English all the time if you think that's the solution. Try to just be understood in that language as much as possible. So in French. And then there are strategies to minimize awkwardness, as I had suggested. So focus on the process, and the results will follow. So we're going to do the awkward case studies, but I want to just kind of zoom out because I can't see you all, and I hope that we're all together. Okay, now I can see you. Okay, good. I'm back. You're all there. So I'm going to now take you to the awkward case studies. And what I would like here is for you to intervene after every one of these case studies so we can really think about what was awkward and what could be done. Okay, and I'm going to keep it on this screen because otherwise I really don't know what's going on your end. So case study number 1. Stella moved to Canada in 2019 and studied marketing at Bishop's University here in Sherbrooke, where I live. She's excited to meet her mentor, Fred, who is the director of marketing at XYZ firm. Fred is friendly, yet asks Stella uncomfortable questions. Is Stella your real name, or do you have another name that's from your first language? Then the next question Fred asks is, or I heard people from your culture like to, is that true? And then Fred finishes with, I love learning about people from all over the world. Okay, so Fred is a really well-intentioned person, but is asking questions that are very uncomfortable to Stella. What do we do? And this is based on a situation that I've actually experienced with a student and their supervisor. What do we do? I'm going to bring it back to us. I'm going to stop sharing, then we'll share again, okay? I'm going to stop sharing. So does anyone want to answer this one for us today? Does anyone have an idea? What do you do in a situation where the mentor is curious about someone who comes from a different culture, and then they're asking all these types of questions? Yeah, Sid.
Well, there's 2 possible options. One is to try and remain in a more professional manner. 2 is maintaining his curiosity till after anything formal is covered and turn it into a more casual conversation where he can also share aspects about himself and make her feel like the lesson is over. This is now just friends.
Okay. Does anyone want to build on Sig's point? And does anyone have any other suggestions? So how would you handle a situation like this? Because this is one that I've experienced quite a bit actually with our students, and so I'm curious how other people feel about it. And it's probably the most awkward. I started with like the most awkward, and I'm moving my way into like the more positive forms of awkwardness. Anyone want to chime in? Okay. So the way this situation happened, for me, what was really important, first off, as the person who was setting up the job shadowing practicum, I hadn't necessarily prepared the individuals for this kind of scenario. Frankly, it was a new program at Bishop, so there were some things I had anticipated, but I was way too focused on the language learning part to factor these types of questions that might happen, like the way Fred would have asked Stella in this situation. And when I reframed it the next time I went into these situations preparing mentors, one of the things I told mentors is never ask questions that are intrusive like this. And if you want to know more about someone's background or their culture, if that's something that you're curious about, and it's only if the person themselves, the mentee in this scenario, shares that information with you first. So if someone's like, hey, I come from, let's say, Colombia, and we love to do this sort of thing in Colombia where, I don't know, we have a festival at the end of the year or whatever, then it's appropriate to ask a question along those lines, because the mentee, the person who's being asked that, has actually opened up the floor for that and has shown, not so subtly, that they are comfortable with that, and they wouldn't mind, talking about this sort of thing. But the question about the name, I think, is could be very difficult to process. And in this case, the individual, that was their name. Okay, so I gave them different names here, but the individual Stella, their name was Stella. And it was very, it put them really at a place of unease, actually, to be confronted with that question. So again, it goes back to this idea of practicing a kind of relentless welcome. Reading the person that you're with is really crucial in all of this. And setting the framework for what you expect is really crucial too. So if you're the mentee, I'm comfortable talking about this, not comfortable talking about that. And likewise, mentors as well. I'm comfortable talking about this, not comfortable talking about that. And we're really doing this for professional reasons, but it's not a bad idea to set the framework at the beginning with what you're comfortable talking about and what you're not, because that actually invigorates you to lean into the things that people are comfortable discussing. So Sig, you brought up a lot of overlapping points, in fact, in your response, and I really appreciate that. Let's move on to the next case study, all right? So I'm gonna go back and share my screen again. Right, entire screen. There we go, share. And our next case study. So, whoopsie days, here we go. Lori studies agriculture at Bishop's. Her French vocabulary is strong, but limited in professional jargon. Her accent sounds very, quote unquote, Quebecois, and everyone compliments her. She is paired with her mentor, Jasleen, at an innovative farm. Lori is so delighted. She gets to work in her own field and gets to improve her French. When Jasleen gives Lori instructions in French, Lori does not always understand. However, Lori always nods in agreement. This leads to the blackberry bushes on the farm being treated with the wrong chemical, causing stress to the plants. Jasleen is confused. Lori apologizes and explains, finally, that she does not necessarily understand everything Jasleen is saying. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. We're going to go back to the group chat here. So what might you do in a situation where you don't understand as a mentee, and what can you do as a mentor to help someone communicate their lack of understanding? What can we do? What are some of the solutions that you may have experienced in your lives when trying to even explain something to someone, whether it has to do with language or not? How do you make it so that it's comfortable for an individual to say that they don't understand something? So in this case, Jasleen, her accent was so good. Sorry, not Jasleen. Sorry, Lori's accent was so good that it fooled Jasleen into thinking that she understands French perfectly, and she didn't have the professional jargon to be able to understand what to do in a certain scenario. So she just kept nodding because the pressure of being perfect was so high, and she couldn't communicate that she didn't understand something. So how do we set a framework or establish an environment where that is possible? What would you do in the case of mentor and mentee? Does anyone want to contribute to this? Yeah, Cynthia, and then Sarah.
Well, I think first off, I think that there should be, as part of the setup, the opportunity that if there's any clarification needed, that all questions are pertinent, because that might make the person feel a little bit more at ease. And it also just assumes that they won't get everything at once. The second thing is that if it's observed that they may not understand, or for the first while, give it to the person and can you summarize back to me what you're going to do in this particular case, because it's a task and they can summarize it back, and then it could be stopped if it's seen that the person doesn't understand, or if you got the first part right, but I would encourage you to do this with the second part, for example.
Yeah, I really love that. I love your point about summarizing. It's so crucial. A lot of communication is summarizing, right? When you're listening to somebody, in so many ways, you are responding to something that you're paraphrasing something that they're saying back to you. So in all forms of communication, this is something that we do, and it's extremely important in language learning as well. So I really appreciate that contribution, Cynthia. So Sarah, and then we're going to go with Jean. Sarah.
Hi, sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, sorry, I see your hand raised. Maybe it was by accident. So you don't have anything to say, Sarah? Okay, that's fine. Jean, let's go with you. What would you do in this scenario?
Yes. Hi. What seems to work for me as a mentor is from the onset of the meeting, I'm just telling the person about 2 or 3 things. First thing is, if I speak too fast for you, please stop me. Stop me right away. Same thing for understanding. If you don't understand one word, not the whole sentence, not the whole idea, just one word, please stop me right away. Not 5 minutes later telling me that you did not understand word 3 in sentence 4, for example.
Yeah.
So, and that for some reason that works. I think people are comfortable with the idea that because I don't know if I speak too quickly or not.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's relative to their understanding.
Yeah.
And I also, when we're in a group, I also tell them to stop someone else they don't understand, because sometimes they have a different mother tongue, different levels. So if they don't understand what their colleagues are saying, I think it's important. And the other thing is about this situation is the fact that I remind, maybe not on day one, but we're here to learn, and the learning process begins at the level you're at. A lot of people on day one just want to show off that they know a lot. And that's when they make a lot of mistakes, as opposed to, let's start with what you know. What are you comfortable with? And also that we're communicating, we're not learning a language. We're communicating in this language to the best of our capability. And that's where you want to start. You cannot start. You need to walk before you run. So those things are that I just said are quite helpful, I find. Thank you.
I really appreciate your response, and I think you touch on something really important that I was talking about in a different way: creating an environment of welcome. And I think the way you make someone feel welcomed to, like you're saying, communicate. It's not necessarily that you're there. It's not necessarily about being perfect with the language, but to just communicate is by telling them you can interrupt at any point, right? That is for me the biggest sign of welcome. In fact, in linguistic learning, it's to tell someone whenever you don't understand something, you should never hesitate to come to me. You create that foundation for them, and you follow through on it. You do listen to them when they tell you that they don't understand. And I think coupled with Cynthia's point about summarizing what we've learned, those two things hand in hand really build a solid foundation for the improvement of someone's language, and also just you have to come at it from where you're at, like you're saying too, right? So if someone is starting off at a certain level, it's fine. That's where we're going to meet you. And so again, welcoming someone is really case specific in certain ways, but it could be broad in the way that you described it, because the key here is to make sure that people can interrupt you as a mentor, to get that space necessary to communicate however possible whether they understand or not. So I think it's really crucial. And I love that you said that don't just do it with me, do it with other people as well. Feel comfortable enough to do that with other people, because that's part of the key to learning. So really great points from our audience. Love it. I'm going to now talk to you about our final case study. I can't believe like the time is flying really quickly here. We're going to talk about the final case study. It's a more positive one, in fact. And I think it's central to language learning. And so this really happened. Different scenario, of course. I didn't want to like expose the individuals or anything like that, but this really happened. It's a really fun example. I think it'll be a great way for us to conclude and maybe share some awkward moments maybe we've experienced before, maybe have a Q&A. So I'm going to start sharing the screen again. Okay, so case study number 3. Antoine, the mentor, and Hélène, the mentee, are both singers and musicians discussing their love of Céline Dion. Hélène sings a Céline Dion aria to explain why she loves the famous singer so much. Antoine is impressed and compliments Hélène on her voice. Instead of saying « Je préfère le sien » while referring to Céline Dion, Hélène responds « Je préfère le chien ». Oops, they both laugh, okay? So that's a kind of slip of the tongue situation. Le sien means the other person's, like, so not mine, not yours, but that person's, le sien. And Hélène said, instead of le chien, she didn't use the right word. It came out funny, and it created an awkward situation. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Back to you all. That one's a funny, that really happened, and the people really had a good laugh about it. What do you do in a situation where words come out funny? Like sometimes the words are not perfect. How do we create a framework where two individuals can really laugh about it? What do we have to set up so that when that happens, we're all just having a good time and being like, oh my God, le chien means dog. It doesn't mean the other person's, right? What do we do to set up a situation where humor is allowed? Anyone have any tips? I wonder if people are writing in the chat. I'm not looking at it. Okay. All right, Cynthia.
I think one of the ways would be, is you might just naturally start maybe smiling a little bit, but also potentially bringing out either something that you can't pronounce well or takes a long time, or turn it into a moment where you're actually sharing a little bit of vulnerability versus clobbering the person for not getting it right, and some phrases in that do take longer to get, or do take longer to become more natural in people's speech.
Yeah, I love it. I think one of the best ways to make someone feel at ease so that we can all laugh together is, sharing in our own vulnerability and showing how we overcame it and how that it's now in our past and that we can laugh about it. I think that's really crucial. So it's an opportunity really to connect with someone when they got something, quote unquote wrong. I say quote unquote because you're learning a language. It doesn't matter. You have to keep trying, right? It's a real moment for connection and a real moment for deepening the bond. And so by sharing moments of vulnerability, like Cynthia has said, I think that helps with that quite a bit. Anyone else want to add anything? Because I have a few ideas. Yeah, Jean.
Well, actually, it happens very often. And without any pretension, I always apologize in the name of the French language for having so many words that resemble each other, spelled differently, but sound the same, or the other way around. So actually, it happens very often, and I don't remember laughing at it. I kind of chuckle maybe, but because it takes me time also to realize that actually those two words are the same until I realize I understand properly what the word is. So we write it, we spell it, repeat, and then I say, that word you have to be careful because it really means something bad when you. In this case, le chien that's a funny one, but so most cases we don't. They don't really. The learner doesn't realize that right away.
Yeah.
And it's once they do, it's not a problem. They realize because they see the similarity between the spelling or the pronunciation, and they understand why, and they take note. Okay, next time won't be chien, it will be something.
That's right. What I love about your answer, Jean, is that you laid out something that I was talking about earlier on in the presentation, which is things are going to be awkward. There's going to be mistakes. We're going to get it wrong. We know that these situations are bound to happen, like slippages and things like that, especially when you're learning a language. Those things are par for the course. They're part of the process. And so I think just being aware of that and acknowledging it right off the bat is really crucial. But as you're saying, the learner isn't always aware of these things. So in this case, the learner was aware. It came out wrong. It just came out like le chien, and it was more of like I think it was just a slip of the tongue, like really more than anything like that. And that's why they were able to laugh about it together, because they were both well aware that this was something funny. And I think the learner actually initiated the laughter in this case. But it's true, a learner will not always know that there is a slippage that's happening. And when we do provide the correction to that slippage, I think what's crucial in all of this is to make sure that the learner is aware that in certain instances, as Jean was saying, the slippage could really mean something potentially bad. But also that the slippage itself is something that slippages themselves are par for the course, as we're saying. Yeah, Jean, you wanted to add to that? Yeah.
Well, just one thing is that most of the time, I also ask for their permission to correct them.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Well, so the answer is yes. I'm here to be corrected. On the other hand, if I don't do that, and then instinctively I correct the person a bit too quickly, sorry, then the person seems to be not comfortable. And therefore, that's why I'm asking. And having their permission makes them aware that we are here to learn and corrections are necessary, because sometimes it's not important, but.
So I agree. Yeah, exactly.
So their permission is important just to make them aware that we are in a process of exchanging information. And just like he would say, I don't understand what you said.
Yeah.
The opposite is true. I think I need to correct you. And the other thing I do also is I ask them to self-correct themselves. I just tell them the last few words were almost there, but not there. So please can you self-correct yourself?
That's so crucial. So allowing the person to be the agent in self-improvement in a language is really important, creating that space for that. It follows the idea of slowing down that I was talking about earlier, So when you're learning a language, sometimes you have to take it slow. And this is a case in which the mentor has to slow it down and not correct immediately, as Jean was saying. So creating that space is really important. And creating that space ties back to the idea of creating a space of welcome too, right off the bat, creating a scenario in which someone feels comfortable. Well, like Jean was saying previously too, for a different example, you have to make sure that the individual that you're with realizes that they can tell you when they don't understand something. But also a space of welcome means asking for consent to do something, especially that's something that could be very sensitive, right? So Jean, I really appreciate your contributions. They're very, I think they're very detail oriented and allow us to really appreciate the scenario that a lot of mentorship relationships are all about. So really, thank you for that. So I think next, what I would like to do, because we're running out of time, I want to just give you, a bit of homework in all this. I think and homework is like, if you take anything away from this talk, make sure that every beginning counts. Okay, you want to create rituals of welcome. So Jean, Cynthia, thank you so much for your tips, because you're speaking about that precisely. You want to start off by creating rituals of welcome. In Jean's case, it's please interrupt me when you don't understand a word. I love that. Make the conversation last through preparation. I'm not saying, hey, memorize a text if you're the mentee, but target some things that you want to accomplish in your language learning, and share that with your mentor, and they'll be a lot more apt to support you in a way that that feels more natural. And once you achieve that natural connection with your mentor, and vice versa with your mentee, you don't, even if you do prepare, you don't necessarily, you can easily go off script, And what I mean by prepare is maybe, focus on the jargon that's specific to your field, if that's something that you're working on with your mentor. And finally, conclude every interaction with reflection. You could do this with your mentor and mentee. You could do it with someone else. You could journal it. You can do it in all sorts of ways, but make sure that you yourself as a learner and you yourself as a mentor are tracking the partnership, and that you're setting yourself with objectives for the next time. And then my number one tip, and I think we've all kind of brought this up, thank you for those who contributed, it's about the process, okay? So don't fixate so much on the outcome, focus on the process. And the process also includes a love of languages in general. Be a big fan of learning French, and that'll help you a lot. And then focus on communication and understanding, and not perfectionism. We're not asking you, to like write and speak like Molière or something like that. Like, that's not what you're being asked to do. And you got to understand that, Quebec French is different from France French, is different from all kinds of other French as well. So it's never going to be a perfect interaction. Again, it's about the process. It's about being understood. And that is what's going to make this a pleasurable experience for everyone involved. So we have about 6 minutes. I think this was a very enriching conversation. Does anyone have any questions or want to share a scenario that they thought was awkward at one point or another in a similar kind of experience? And maybe we can all troubleshoot that together. Or I don't know, maybe you have other kinds of questions as well that have not been answered, or there may be questions that are more pertinent to the Circonflex program that Michelle can help you out with as well. So let me know. Do we have any questions or any things that we'd like to share? Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. So we talked about the importance of setting boundaries, particularly at the start of a mentoring relationship. I'm wondering, just because sometimes we don't know we have a boundary until it's been crossed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, how would you recommend navigating that as a mentee or mentor, like in the moment?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So I'm going to speak from my own experience, okay? The students that I worked with, they were very lucky in that they had multiple mentors. They had their on-site supervisor for learning French. So they were learning French in their own field, so at the job setting that they were at. But they also had me. So I was their external individual who could be there on call for them at any point in time. So in some cases, I would actually be there with the students while they were learning. I would sometimes send them off, but I would be there for 15 minutes, or sometimes I'd spend the whole session with them, just to model to both parties forms of interaction. So the question that you're asking is very, very, it's one of as a person who facilitates this sort of thing, it's one of my biggest fears. Boundaries are crossed. I'm not there. I can't intervene. Oh no, what do I do? So I think the key, first of all, is preparation, as I said. And in lieu of preparation in that moment, like you said, if you didn't realize your boundary was being crossed in that moment, I think that the role of the mentee in this situation is to be very, very honest. I think I said honesty is one of the pillars in all this. And Jean, you brought up a lot of examples where honesty was a crucial component. I think you have to tell your mentor that you're uncomfortable with the situation. That if you haven't taken offense to the situation, please present it as such. Be like, well, I don't take full offense. I realize that you're trying to do the best that you can, and you can even speak in now a language that's more comfortable. If it's English, please feel free to say it in English if you can't get it out. Once we're emotionally drained from a boundary being crossed, I think it's fair to resort to using English as the language of communication in this scenario. Explain to the person what happened, that the boundary was crossed. Maybe take a deep breath with the individual that you're with and be like, I'd like to just take like a moment of silence, see if I can reset, if we can both reset. And if not, no, I think Circonflex, we have an external support system for that as well. Know that you can, bring that up to the individual who is, preparing the experience for everyone. So I think it's you in this case, Michelle, or you're involved in that as well. So bring it up to Michelle, and hopefully we can all sit down and talk about what those boundaries are, and then set the stage for the next meeting. But it's a really tricky situation because it's always going to depend on the level of comfort of the individual. If you don't feel comfortable even to go that far, I think it's fair to say that, hey, a boundary has been crossed. I really need to take a break and step back. And I would like us maybe to just take a pause. I need to think this over and talk it over with the person that is in charge of the program. I think I think that's probably like the right course of action as well. Some situations, depending on how the boundary has been crossed, so without like a real example for that, are difficult to gauge. But I think you have two options. You can take the brave route if you feel confident enough, and you can do it in English. And the other option is to say, I'd like to excuse myself. A boundary has been crossed, and I would need to talk it over with the person running the program. And I know this could create set off alarms for the mentor. I think the key here is that we always frame our experiences from a place of welcome at the beginning. And if the boundary is still crossed, hopefully the mentor, or let's say it's the other way around, the mentee will be understanding that a pause needs to happen and a break needs to happen. And that's how I run it. But I'm open to other suggestions, because for me, I was the additional mentor in a lot of the situations. I was generally there quite often, and I was doing a lot to frame the experience. But in a lot of these situations, maybe that's not the case. So I'm curious about people who might have one-on-one experience mentoring or being mentored, what they might do. I think it's a fantastic question, Michelle. Has anyone experienced something like this, or how would you react in a moment that could be very, where the boundaries cross and it's a bit much in the moment? How would you do that? Because it reminds me of the first example that I provided. Thank you, Annie. Have a good one. Yeah, Jean, please go ahead.
Sorry, you said that we should be authentic.
Yeah.
And really what that means is that you cannot be otherwise. I mean, you can fake it this way or fake it that way, but to be authentic in a case like this would be to apologize right away. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you cross a cultural line, you don't necessarily feel it right away. Neither you or the mentee, or the other way around. And if it's the other way around, sometimes I don't correct right away, because it means that the person, depends on how long they've been in contact with our culture, or the other way around with other cultures. So I think apologizing right away would be what I would do. I'd say, I'm sorry for what I just said. Let me correct that, and that's it. I mean, if it blows up or out of proportion, that's a different story. But usually crossing the line is not a huge mistake. It's a mistake, yes. So I think being authentic means to apologize.
Really appreciate that. Yeah, that's a crucial element too. You'd hope that the person who did cross the line would be given an opportunity to apologize, and that they would apologize as well, and I think it's fair as the person whose boundaries were crossed to ask for an apology. I think that's authentic as well, to be like, look, I understand that this is part of interacting in this particular setting, and I feel more comfortable if you apologized over this. Let me explain to you why this is a difficult situation. But at the same time, like I was saying, you can also switch over and go straight to English if that's the language that you're most comfortable with to explain the point. I think that's fair in that situation, and maybe it is too much. But like Jean was saying, often a lot of the scenarios aren't blown up like that. But if it is a bit too much, I think it's also fair to be like, hey, I think a boundary has been crossed. I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to have to think things over, and that's fair as well. So I think there are different permutations. I think it's the severity that really matters, but authenticity is really crucial in all of this, and it goes on both sides. I think you can't. Language learning is messy, and you can't get anywhere without authenticity, for sure. So really appreciate that, Jean. I think we're past the hour. I don't know how you feel about this, Michelle, and everyone who's here. Does anyone have more questions? What can we do to wrap this up for you in a way that's really meaningful? For me, I can definitely share some more tips. You can write me as well with questions. I can leave you my email in the chat. But is there anything else that we haven't covered or that you'd like covered that you'd like us to talk about? And if we have more time, Michelle, do you think we have like 5 more minutes, something like that?
Yeah, and if people need to go, they're welcome to. But yeah, if people want to stick around and you have more to share, please do.
So here, I'm putting my email in the chat for anyone who wants to reach out. Okay, perfect. Well, Jean, go ahead. Yes.
Well, just sorry. Will there be more such sessions on different topics? I guess there will, but I'm asking, if not, I think they're very useful. To me, they are.
Thanks so much for the feedback, Jean.
Because it confirms things I do right, and it confirms when I don't, and then it reminds me that these things do exist, because you covered a lot of theoretical ground in addition to the practical ground. So we kind of because I'm more practical, and I don't know all the theory that you refer to, but I'm glad to know that there is. And whatever we do is not instinctive only. So I think it's important if you would have more such sessions on different aspects of mentor-mentee relationship.
So before I leave it to Michelle to answer whether or not there's going to be more of these, what I will say is that's really some great feedback, Jean. Like we're only doing this, all of us. We're only doing this if it benefits the mission, right? And so just to hear that for you feel like it's echoing a lot of the things that you're doing right, and it's allowing you to see that there's a framework for how to do things. I really appreciate that. I think I'm really happy. It means the world to me, and it makes every minute we spent today together as a group worthwhile. I think, Jean, you touched on another great point, which is we need that affirmation, right? And that comes from a sense of community. We're a community of language learners, but also language teachers in this sense. And we can help each other out in various ways. We all have different roles to play. So remember that you're not the only one going through this process. As Jean was saying, he felt like a lot of this was echoing the good things that were going on in his sessions and in his encounters. So you're not at it alone. There are other people going through the same process. Reach out to those people. Find ways to reach out to those people. And yeah, is definitely the place to go if you want more information on resources for how to reach out to people who are going through the same process. So I think we're a big community, and the more we're together going through this process, the more language learning is going to be fun, meaningful, and it's going to yield the types of results that you are all looking for to come out of this. And the number one result, I think, is that value of being surrounded by a group of people who can really foster that understanding, because language cannot happen without mutual understanding. And I mean it beyond just linguistic understanding. I think it's a compassion element too that's really important in all this. So really appreciate that, Jean. Michelle, do we have any other lunch and learns set up for our fantastic group here?
We don't have anything set up at the moment, but it's definitely something that we are working on. So stay tuned.
So what I would suggest is is people start proposing things they might be interested in for a lunch and learn, and the fine people at the Provincial Employment Roundtable, I'm sure will want to hear your feedback, and we'll start building, I think, lunch and learns in consequence. So that's what I would suggest. Contact people like Michelle. Tell them what you might need, what would amplify the program for you, and we'll find you the experts, because I'm part of PERT too, to some extent. I know I work at Bishop. I have a lot of hats that I wear, but I would love to think that we would factor that feedback into the next lunch and learn. So if you have any suggestions, share them with Michelle, and that way we can all come out here as a bigger community and stronger for it. And this is just the beginning. We're going to keep doing a lot more of these things as part of Circonflex. So yeah, the feedback is so important. So I really appreciate your feedback, Sean. I appreciate all of you being here today. Such a pleasure. Yeah, and thanks, Michelle, for organizing.
Yeah, thank you for hosting, Bassam.
Yeah. All right, folks.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And don't be strangers. Please don't hesitate to write me. And yeah, fantastic time with you all today, and wishing you a lovely Monday. And hopefully the spring will be around really soon. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you, Javier. Thank you, Mona. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you.